Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers, along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if you please, you join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. But this is actually it has quickly turned into a drastically different Hail than I was personally anticipating. Obviously, Benvenidos and welcome to the Horror Show, and this program that I've been doing for over 6 years at this particular point, all things El Rey. But El Rey had a collaboration that I felt was unbelievably prolific, both books in fact. And sadly, the man that he did that work with in both The Talisman and Black House, and let's just show off the books here, and they had been long discussing a third entry in this Jack Sawyer series, but yeah, Peter Straub passed away today, so it's one of those very bittersweet sort of situations where we're all stoked because Fairy Tale is coming out today, the new King fantasy return, hopefully going to be epic and amazing, and I was originally trying to get as ambitious as possible and try to go through this book starting right at midnight when the Audible hit, and then I could, you know, hopefully get a review out same day. Unfortunately, this beast is a little bit too big. Unfortunately, it was one situation with something like Later or Elevation. It was a lot easier to get a review up with the quickness in that regard when you don't have as much to digest and to work your way through. So, brand new Stephen King Fairy Tale out today. I just got my Amazon delivery, so we'll at least take a quick look at the book. And then there's another unboxing, which was just a very long time coming from my beloved peeps at Cemetery Dance, you know, Chiz and the Blue and the rest of the crew over there. It was a 2021 Stephen King grab bag that I ordered, well, back in the aforementioned year, and due to, you know, many of the press issues, you know, with like the printers and things of that nature, there was a exclusive new short story that was going to be collected in this some sort of literary magazine. I can't remember if it had a collegiate affiliation. I'm sure we'll see once the unboxing. So there was already a very busy day ahead of us, but then this news about Pete drops, and you know, it's so funny how up until the most recent reread of Black House that I did a live Book of the Month review for, I didn't appreciate it as much as The Talisman. The Talisman is that seminal, just less on the horror side, and it's presumably finally being adapted by the Duffer Brothers for Netflix, which is incredibly exciting and really saddening that, you know, Straub won't be around to actually see what that finished product is going to be, because Amblin and Spielberg had the rights for a long-ass time and were trying to develop it as a feature. I still always thought that it would have served itself better, especially in this new streaming age, as a more lengthy, extended form sort of thing, especially because, I mean, The Talisman is very compared to Black House, which is a little bit more of a straightforward narrative, and not so much straightforward, like, I don't even know why I'm using that term. It's like, I guess the distinction is that The Talisman is much more episodic, and that's why they were, well, they tried to make it into a comic book. It lasted one volume and then unfortunately got canceled. But yeah, it's like all of the young Jack adventures were, I mean, whether when he was at the taproom place, or he was being, you know, abused working at the bar, or when he was in the crazy religious-centric Home for Troubled Boys and stuff like that, and obviously all of the adventures in the territories. Yeah, it just felt very, like, if you read my beloved Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi, each adventure was slightly self-contained in kind of a fascinating way, whereas in Black House, it's more of like building, dread, and all this other stuff, and much more horror-centric was Black House, and much more tower-centric, you know, for all of you tower junkies out there that are constant readers. The second one, especially with the discussion with Parkus, it very much like catches fans up to speed about all things related to the Dark Tower in the span of a few pages, which is very interesting as he's explaining the significance of it, you know, to Jack. And yeah, I really, I think this probably, no pun intended, puts the proverbial nail in the coffin, and that's maybe in bad taste to say, but yeah, I think that this does essentially mean that we're not going to get that third Jack Sawyer book, which has been listed on Wikipedia for years. It's been sitting there because Steve had talked about it, and Pete, until he started having, El Rey, Sai King had been commenting on the health of Peter Straub here and there, but he obviously didn't want to go into any sort of, excessive personal details and things like that. And I often, whether it's, after effects from substance abuse, or whether it's something really personal like Wes Craven, with his brain cancer that he didn't want to tell anybody about. He kept it completely in the family and in his circle of friends and confidants and whatnot. And that's why when Wes passed away so abruptly, we were just like, holy shit, nobody had any idea he was even sick. I mean, the Black Panther actor too, man. I mean, and so often it's a personal sort of situation, but there were murmurings that there had been health afflictions with Mr. Straub for a long time. And so, I don't know, will we ever see a third Jack Sawyer book? I don't know if it would have the same flavor with Steve writing it on his own. And I mean, based on the sort of moral and personal conviction and stuff that I think Steve has as a person that he's kind of imparted and made very obvious over the years, I don't think we're getting that book written solo by El Rey. So if you haven't read The Talisman, I'm sure that with the Duffers, the guys behind Stranger Things, finally getting the adaptation done, because with clout like theirs, I don't think it's going to be another one of these start-stop, like, oh, it's optioned and we think it's going to happen, but we're not 100%. I guarantee that the Duffers being behind it, and also with the association with Netflix, I mean, it's the kind of story that will play very well with that Stranger Things sort of audience, and I'm very curious how they're going to do wolf here and now. I'm very curious how they're going to approach that, but I know Netflix is kind of reeling in their spending a little bit with how excessive and gratuitous they've been over the years, but I think I might actually like Black House more, with the Albert Fish, I think, or Fisher or whatever the name of that serial killer who a lot of our guy was just kind of based on within this, but especially with the Tower connections here. Although I will say that like with the wastelandy sort of stuff and slow mutants and whatnot, I definitely feel like Straub helped Steve in the early years kind of fashion a lot of Tower mythology that maybe King wasn't 100% about, or he was still kind of trying to develop in his head, but whereas the connections are much more apparent in Black House with its greatness and with its much more horror-centric sort of situation, I feel like they were less apparent and pronounced in The Talisman. And so this helped form Dark Tower mythology, and this just further reinforced the importance of it. They're both terrific books. I know Straub published lots of other stuff in his own right. Coco is one that I think is probably thrown out more so than any. I know that's kind of Vietnam story. I haven't personally read it. Julia is another that was recommended to me. I have read Ghost Story. That was turned into a feature film in the early 80s also. So yeah, Straub was very prolific. He was a colleague, a confidant, and a collaborator of Steve's. And I just wanted to bring up what he posted on Twitter about an hour ago. And then we will segue into, hopefully a little bit more of a joyful celebration of the day of New Sai King. But yeah, Steve put it as such. It's a happy day for me because Fairy Tale is published. It's a sad day because my good friend and amazingly talented colleague and collaborator Peter Straub has passed away. Working with him was one of the great joys of my creative life. So, I mean, if you're going to get that sort of recommendation from what a lot of people consider to be the greatest horror writer that has lived, although, yes, obviously HP and, Poe and some of those others. So it is debatable. I know lots of other people love the Clive Barker stuff, and man, Lady Catherine prefers Barker's writing, and even prefers Joe Hill's writing, the son of the king. But let's give a rest peacefully and remembrance of Straub, and go into the rest of the order of the day, which first and foremost is going to be this little Amazon box that I pre-ordered this when I believe pre-orders were first allowed to happen. Although I will say, with the fact that they said that it might not even be arriving at my home until 10 o'clock tonight, I was like, really? I mean, I could have just gone and spent a little bit more, and gone to Barnes & Noble and received Fairy Tale. And despite the years of doing this, I don't have quite the clout compared to others who got nice advanced copies of it. But I am extremely stoked for this. And I also saw Joe Hill, Steve's son, on Twitter posting about it today too. Unbeknownst to me, or if I had read about it, I did not recall. Let's go for an illustration that's a little bit early. So I'm already, just by looking at this, getting a Eyes of the Dragon vibe, which I totally watched. No, excuse me, which I totally loved and wanted to watch as a television series when it got optioned at Hulu. But that's the thing. I mean, even think about the Dark Tower series on Prime, and obviously they put their money where it was probably a little bit more beneficial, because Rings of Power seems to be very popular. I know it's kind of divisive amongst certain fans because it's going off of what the Silmarillion, or I'm not a Tolkien person, so please go easy. But Gabriel Rodriguez did the illustrations for this, which is really cool. So you've got, obviously, that's the house where a lot is going to transpire. The first chapter, the goddamn bridge, although he's not spelling it with the M, the Godam Bridge, maybe? Am I pronouncing that more properly? The Miracle, the Howling. We do know that a dog as a companion, as you even see on the front cover. Sorry for all of the auto adjust with the lighting and everything, but it's going to play very significantly. This sucker is, it's almost 600 pages, or right around that. I'm trying not to it is approximately $5.99 with the acknowledgments in the very back. So I am unbelievably excited to start this. I'm gonna go out and do some work later today, and I'll be listening to some of it and then coming home and reading it. So I'm not sure if we're gonna wait till next Tuesday for an actual review proper of this, or if maybe with the scheduling with Cecil, maybe we can just throw it up as soon as I'm done with it here in a couple of days, because I do consume these with a crazy ferocity all too often. But let's just have let's read the Charlie Reed quote here at the very end. All right. I'm sure I can tell this story. I'm also sure no one will believe it. It's fine with me. Telling it will be enough. My problem, and I'm sure many writers have it, not just newbies like me, is deciding where to start. My first thought was with the shed, because that's where my adventures really began. But then I realized I would have to tell about Mr. Bowdish first, and how we became close. Only that never would have happened except for the miracle that happened to my father. A very ordinary miracle, you could say. One that's happened to many thousands of men and women since 1935, but it seemed like a miracle to a kid. Only that isn't the right place either, because I don't think my father would have needed a miracle if it hadn't been for that goddamn bridge. Okay, so I see where we're going. So that's where I need to start, with the goddamn Sycamore Street Bridge. And now thinking of those things, I see a clear thread leading up through the years to Mr. Bowdish and the padlocked shed behind his ramshackle old Victorian, which we obviously saw at the very beginning with that first Gabriel Rodriguez image, which is what I was trying to get to and spaced in the midst of my glee. But Gabriel Rodriguez, who was doing all of the illustrations in at least this particular version of the book, I'm not sure if that's the case for the UK and for some of the other territories. Yeah, he worked on Lock and Key with Joe Hill, Steve's son, very close collaborator. They just put out that great collection of the Sandman crossover and a few other cool things. If you haven't read Lock and Key, I mean, to quote right here, God damn, what are you waiting for? Lock and Key is so exceptional. But, last phrases that we have here, but a thread is easy to break. So not a thread, but a chain. Strong one. And I was the kid with the shackle clamped around his wrist. And Charlie Reed is obviously our protagonist. He is our Jack Sawyer. He is our, our kind of stand-in, because there have been murmurings with regards to this particular book that it started out as, at least in some ways, Steve really wanting to finally finish the Jack Sawyer trilogy. And so that's where it's even more ironic, that when Steve veered into the kind of more fantastical with the Talisman in the first place, that was a Straub connection, and then Straub passes away today. Just so many relatively eerie correlations, I think, with regards to all of this. But I am incredibly excited for Fairy Tale, and more importantly, beyond even giving my thoughts on this book, I always love to hear the thoughts of casual fans, hardcore constant readers, tower junkies, which is the subset of the subsect of the subsect. But yeah, I can't wait to get started on this and to give my thoughts, but more importantly, to hear those from all of you. So I'm not gonna meander about this, because the big thing that I was so stoked finally came through the pipeline was none other than that 2021 Stephen King grab bag from Mr. Chismar and his crew out there. And I thought that I had brought in a weapon of destruction, but I did not. So what I'm gonna do is just tear into this sucker. I pre-ordered it, I think over a year ago, and I even exchanged emails with them a few times. I was like, hey, yo, when that Grab Bag 2021 coming out? Because we're like halfway through 2022. And yeah, so I had an immense amount of anticipation, and let us see all that is housed in this unboxing. Because there's supposed to be that mysterious thing. You know, we love doing the band boxes here on the horror show. So that is brand new Stephen King short story Grab Bag for 2021, received this weekend in September of 2022. But, okay, so this is the main thing, and that's what I'm seeing right here at the very top, and I'm actually gonna freeze frame, and we're going to jump ahead. But so this is where a brand new Stephen King short story is housed, and so McSweeney 66, I do believe, upon further recollection, that this is a affiliation. Yeah, and for it to be 66, that is kind of funny. But yes, they do have a university affiliation, if I am not mistaken, and I'm trying to see where that is potentially given. But okay, so there's letters, there's short stories, there's a few different things. But let's just properly address the King. Welcome all tin can travelers. Paradise, Pelican Paradise. Okay, I'm guessing that's like a publishing sort of thing. But yes, McSweeney's. I feel kind of out of my element by not remembering any direct sort of affiliation as far as importance of publication. But so Willie the Weirdo is a 17-page Stephen King short story. Brand new, uncollected Stephen King short story. And I am going to jump away for a second and read this. And then we're going to get right back into the rest of what is here in this grab bag. Alright, so back for the interspersement, everybody. And thoughts on Willie the Weirdo. Not very long, as I said. It's listed at 17 pages, but it's more like 16 and a half. And the print is fairly big in this. McSweeney's 66, so not very good. Did not feel as inspired as I was hoping. I mean, yeah, I like the alliteration of the title, and yet it's very tough with Cy King, more so than ever, I feel like, lately, with short stories when he goes too short with these literary magazines and, you know, just publications where, like, if King has, like, a 30-something page with, like, you know, smaller print, sort of short, pretty much everything in Bizarre Bad Dreams I thought was great, and yet I guess the exception to this rule is that play that I reviewed a few months ago, which was from the literary magazine. I know that one was affiliated with a particular university, Stuart O'Nan, who he did Faithful and A Face in the Crowd with. Like, I thought that kicked ass, you know, but I mean, the short story that was on Scribd, and I know it's an exclusive there in both the print and the Audible form, well, I guess audio book form, because, you know, Audible has the affiliation with Amazon. But hey, if I'm just gonna try to make it brief and not, like, you know, like really negative, there's lots of other emotional stuff going on today with Pete and stuff. But so yeah, Willie is a weirdo, and he has a slightly older sister named Roxy who teases him all the time. He's in the remedial class, but she teases him more so because of the fact that he is obsessed with, like, just dead stuff and, like, gruesomeness and whatever. So he has a collection of bugs and so he likes dead bugs and dead animals, and yet he has a very strange relationship with his grandpa, as it's spelled deliberately by King in this. And so, whereas he's not very close with his father or his mother, and his sister teases him, so that's probably the extent of their interaction, but yet Grandpa, he has Grandpa tell him all of these stories about stuff like Gettysburg and even back to the times of Cleopatra and whatnot. And the interesting thing about Grandpa is Grandpa talks about them like he lived them firsthand. And so this is, I guess, one of the only more interesting aspects about this story. It's the fact that you have this dying grandfather and he has this close connection with this weird kid. And so that's maybe why I'm so just not big on this story, because it echoed so many different things from King, and I have called him out on this many times. As much as I love, you know, my dude El Rey, I feel like I really like the crocodile story, man. I really dug that one. But that's really one of the only short stories that has gone on the uncollected side of things that I really enjoyed that much recently, because this one echoed a little bit of parts in Atlantis. It echoed, I mean, even Fairy Tale, which you guys know we were just talking about, came out today. So, you know, I think maybe it's because King probably had, his dad wasn't around, and so he was craving that sort of fatherly connection, and yeah, that's why he continues to go back to this, and you know, like old man, young boy sort of thing. No, it's not that sort of thing, guys, you creeps. But no, it's something that we saw in Hearts in Atlantis. It's something that we saw in Mr. Harrigan's phone. It's something that we're about to see again. King, obviously, in his life, had that resonance of that connection. In this case, it's not a blood family sort of thing, because you do find out, without getting super spoilery about this, as Roxy, the older sister of Willie, mentions, that she's like, yeah, you know, he's not actually Dad's real dad, you know, because their father, Richard, I think his name is, was adopted. And so, just even that adds an, I don't know, essence of weirdness, maybe a little bit, or at least uncertainty, unspecificity. And, but yeah, they've got this weird little kind of creepy connection, which, I mean, the grandpa didn't even have with his adopted son, you know, Willie's father. So it's grazed over, it's not explored, and that's the tough thing in such a short little story. Like, there were aspects about this that I was intrigued by, especially with the hinting at the fact that multiple lives and reincarnation, like this really, it kind of veers into the possibility of reincarnation. It really truly does. And so that's kind of funny, but and not funny in a bad way, just kind of, I guess, ironic. Interesting is a better way of putting it. That's not the descriptor I was forging for. But of course, since King wrote this during the pandemic, it does also veer into some of the stuff about Captain Trips and everything, and so we have a few pages about that, and the grandfather being sick, and you wonder, does he have that? But then you start to realize, no, it's something different, without getting into too much spoilery territory. But it just felt very much incredibly grazed over. I'm not going to say it felt like King going through the motions, but I would imagine if he is contributing something to this particular McSweeney 66, I would imagine, I'm not going to say it was like him doing them a favor, but maybe it kind of was. And when you are kind of petitioned to do something, as opposed to, especially in the artistic world, as opposed to just having the inspiration and the fire and that sort of, you know, creative ambition, I think that's where we get stories like Willie the Weirdo. The very end, without getting into it, it echoed another short story that starts with a big G that was adapted into an episode of Tales from the Dark Side, and I'm just like, King, really? Like, really? You know? So I'm gonna have to give this one a thumbs down. Regrettably, I'll Siskel and Ebert that shizzle and say that most definitely for the $20 price point. I mean, as a completist, I guess I'm glad that I have it, but man, track down that Stuart Onan play. Stuart Onan, he edited it, and that particular literary journal from from school is so much better. Goodness Lord, so good. This one, major disappointment. So, I'm not sure. I think King maybe has one more collection of shorts, like, in him, as he's in his 70s now, but it's not going to be a particularly memorable one, if I'm going to be completely candid, you know. But yeah, Bizarre Bad Dreams, such a great final note to go out on. That's got an amazing amount of great short stories. If I'm going to just give another shout out as far as King's short collected stuff goes, you guys have seen me on here previously many times, I would imagine, or if you're new, Bamadinos and all that. But yeah, Night Shift and Just After Sunset and Bizarre Bad Dreams are all really exceptional. Great diversity of storytelling. This one, unfortunately, Willie the Weirdo, just a lot of half-baked ideas. The fact that the kid is weird and obsessed with death, and he's watching like moles go down the drain and all this stuff. There's a lot of callbacks. He's making a clown in his mashed potatoes. I feel like King is almost like he's just doing all those. It's like the equivalent of the fact that we remade Halloween for the third goddamn time. You know, and I know, yes, the Jamie Lee one from 2018 was a sequel, but it's just like, it is very much the nothing is new under the sun, and that's why I'm so excited for Fairy Tale and to get back into the end of this video. So let's do the... All right, everyone. So the rest of the grab bag, at least for right now, it does look like something I already own. So it is a copy of Shivers 6, and this does have, and it's edited by Richard Chismar. This does have a, I believe, I'm trying to remember which Steve story. Okay, The Crate. So this has, before The Crate was actually appropriated for Creepshow, yeah, it was a short story that, I think it was in one of the magazines, or one of the men's magazines, I don't know, inconsequential. But it was later actually put out in Shivers 6, and there's all kinds of other big-time peeps on here. Brian James Freeman, Brian Hodge is another name that kind of rings a bell. Straub, yeah, rest peacefully. Beth Vinson is in here. So yeah, you've got a nice collection. So they have put out, I think, 7 or 8 of these Shivers at this particular point. I know I have Weeds, which was also adapted for Creepshow. That was in, I think, Shivers 7 or 8. I know I have a copy of that too, since that's a very tough one to track down. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe I'll do a giveaway for this or something. That could be fun. See what else we got in here. All right. Okay, so Dark Screams, Volume 1, Advanced Review Copy, not for sale, edited by Richard Chismar and Brian James Freeman. I think those are 2 of the main dudes behind a lot of, like, I know Chismar, you know, like Cemetery Dance is his baby. I think Brian James Freeman actually went and started his own publishing company because I believe it was either Heart-Shaped Box or, I don't know, it was something Joe Hill that I got from him, but let's see what this is all about. So Dark Screams presents 25 stories written by the biggest names in the horror today, including Stephen King, Robert McCammon, Clive Barker, Peter Straub. Straub's name is, of course, Bentley Little. Yeah, so there's lots of big-time names on here. And Richard Christian Matheson, obviously, son of Matheson proper. These stories add up to more than 160,000 words of terror, which were originally published as ebook mini anthologies by Random House. And this omnibus edition will see them in print together for the first time as an oversized edition by the editors and artists, featuring full-color cover artwork by Vincent Chong and full-color end papers by Ellen M. Grant. This special edition was designed with both general readers and series book collectors in mind. Please provide any reviews or coverage of this book. Okay, so interesting. So let's see what it actually features from King in here, because I believe I had heard about this. Oh, Weeds, of course. Right, I just, for things that I already possess. Wow. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's any illustrations or anything, but with this being an advanced copy, a lot of the time that stuff is not completely finished. So, wow, I definitely like the cover art. You know, with notice how I'm trying now. I'm like, oh, 2 things that I already kind of have. But there is at least it looks like there's a print of some sort in here. So I'm gonna ramshackle the rest of this and let's see what we got. Oh, and it's nicely sealed up, so not going to be all bent up. Like, that's the tough thing with mail and prints. Like, some people really like, you know, rolling up posters and prints and things like that, but I'm not into it, man. The whole bend factor. Oh, what do we? Oh, rad. Okay, well, this is pretty goddamn cool. So Glenn Chadbourne, who has worked on lots of stuff with Cemetery Dance, and now we're gonna have to adjust the color, back to me. But yeah, Glenn Chadbourne, he did the 2 Secretary of Dreams, which were really awesome. He also did the, oh goodness, the Darkman illustrations for the poem, one of the first things where King hadn't even really solidified who Randall Flagg was, and he had written this poem called The Darkman, and Cemetery Dance did a very cool release of that, and Chadbourne did those as well. And he's done various other artist coverage for CD and for various other people. I believe he's based in Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, he is a New England dude, and this is very dope. Let's take another peek at it. Interestingly enough, it's Steve with with that monkey from the short story, which I believe is collected in Skeleton Crew, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, as a kid, I always got that particular monkey confused with like the weird cover of Monkey Shines, I want to say that was a Romero movie. Anyway, inconsequential, so this is a very cool print, and also, as you can see with the red contrast, signed by Glenn himself. So, dare I say, I think this is the dopest thing in the entire collection, aside from this short story as well that you just heard my thoughts about. So, yeah, guys, that is at least the extent of what I had planned for the proceedings. I really wish it was a full review of Fairy Tail, but yeah, at 600 pages, it was just a little too much to attempt to digest without an advanced copy. But yes, very excited to have shared my thoughts, about Willie the Weirdo. And yes, I extend a grande gracias, and you can find me on all social media sectors, being Jaime Fuego, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, and some new content coming over on that Infuegotainment very soon. Patreon stuff, all kinds of things that I've been wanting to get set up for a long time, but it's finally properly in the works. And yes, stay tuned for a review of none other than Fairy Tail, and I do think that there's probably going to be 2 separate reviews. I posed the question on the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group that I've had together for quite some time, where there's great palaver, over 1,000 members, and so it's not one of those ginormous sort of FB groups, and I know some people are even averse to Facebook at this particular point. They prefer Discord or whatever, which I really need to start one of those for Hail to Stephen King. Would y'all migrate over, or would that be just having to maintain 2 different forums of sorts? I don't know. Other things that I have thought about here, especially, it's like with Mr. Harrigan's Phone coming out in just a few weeks, and then this new book. Yeah, I mean, there's still lots of King stuff in the pipeline. I still am very worried about Salem's Lot, and if we're ever going to see it, and I did the most recent Hail to Stephen King video about that. Much more caffeinated Fuego, much more enthusiastic Fuego, but it's a somber day, unfortunately, with the loss of Peter, and so it kind of dampened my enthusiasm a little bit, if I'm going to be completely candid, but yeah, so I am probably going to do both a non-spoiler and a full-on live spoilers discussion about this new King tome that I am oh so excited about. But yeah, the day really, for me, is going to feel a lot more about the loss of Peter and the sadness that obviously King felt and everything else. So that if the review of Willie the Weirdo wasn't quite as enthused as y'all were hoping for, I do greatly apologize. But yeah, it's weird how, because I've been kind of paying attention to Diamondbacks baseball. I don't even like baseball. I'd rather watch paint dry most of the time. But the Snakes are playing some pretty good ball, and sometimes, a curveball comes and you're not necessarily expecting that. And that's kind of how today transpired, especially with so much going on. I'm like, oh, I finally got the grab bag. I'm like, oh man, Fairy Tail's coming out. And you're just like, oh, fuck, Peter Straub passed away. So, yeah, it is kind of a mixed bag. Just like, unfortunately, the grab bag that I got from Cemetery was not, Cemetery Dance to be specific, was maybe not all that I was hoping for. But, hey, cool prize giveaways or something that I will most certainly pass along to other constant readers and, just big-time fans of El Rey. So, I have been Fuego. Y'all have been Rad Status as usual, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, San Amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I'm hoping we have been well met. Let me share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until that instance awesomely occurs, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. I mean, if you can track down McSweeney 66, it wasn't bad. But Fairy Tail, dude, this is the new hotness. What's up?